My name is Bundy. I'm the political legislative director from kind of a neighbor, New Mexico. I guess what happens when you have a point sweep and it's at a corner and there's no, is that technically bordering? Or, anyway, four-corner state. I live in Santa Fe, do a lot of working out with lots of Christians all over the state. And every now and then get to go up to places like Wisconsin. Isn't that your state house?
Yes.
Oh, he went back. Yeah, that's the Wisconsin capital right there. Richwood, Playgrounds there. So, you know, I was in the county just south of Madison where we actually won the recall. Yeah, that was a brutal fight right there, and our members took it out of the chin. We're not going to give up. One day longer, one day stronger. Thank you all for being here, because really you can have all these organizations and people from other states and even your elected leaders here in the state. Nothing changes until people get involved. And they write letters to their editor, they go on blogs, they talk at town halls, they let their elected officials know about it, they let the corporate sponsors of that know that this is unacceptable to them. We've heard a lot about process so far, and that is incredibly important, because if you don't have transparency in democracy, it's not really democracy. But I want to talk a little bit about the specific substantive problems with privatization, because I think a lot of the time we just assume that everyone's on the same page with us, and that privatization is, we think, you know, it's bad, and it's all, we're just trying to make a profit. But I think we really need to be able to talk about the underlying reasons why it's bad. Some people can hear me, the private sector entirely, may have some communists or socialists, I don't know. I'm not one of them. My dad was a banker. I think there's actually room for the private sector. The private sector does a lot of great things. But here's the thing, you don't have to be opposed to the private sector to believe that privatization is wrong. And here's why. If it's privatization of taxpayer-funded services, by definition, it's not something the private sector does. It is not in the free market. If taxpayers have to pay for it, it means that the private sector can't do it, doesn't want to do it, can't make enough money doing it, or they shouldn't do it. So let's talk about a couple of those. Can't do it. I would argue, and Benjamin Franklin was the first great anti-privatization person in this country, I would argue that the fire departments of our country should not be privatized. Because what ends up happening is you have people pay subscription fees, and if you're not a subscriber, and this is actually what used to happen. Now, if any of you read some biographies of Ben Franklin, because this was a really big issue of his early on, yeah, it's true. The guy from Time did that. They have all these fires because they have all these townhouses next to each other, and you could have, there was actually a market for private fire insurance, and there were all these little private fire companies like, hey, I got some buckets of water, and you'll come throw them on your house when it gets caught on fire. The problem is, if your neighbor doesn't have that insurance, right, that's really like the health insurance to me too. If your neighbor doesn't have that insurance, their house catches fire, nobody's coming to save them. Good luck saving your house, right? So there's some things that the private market simply isn't efficient at doing. And there are some things where competition doesn't make sense. Let's take trash collection, for example. Can you imagine the additional cost to the citizens, whether they paid fees to a private company or it was all sort of given to private companies by tax dollars? Can you imagine the additional cost if you had to run 20 different landfills? Well, let's say there are 5 competitors, right? They all become these little monopolies and duopolies and triangles. Let's say you had 5 companies that offer trash pickup in your neighborhood. 5 sets of garbage trucks coming down the street every week. 5 sets of landfills. 5 times the number of trucks. It'd be a disaster, and it would be that much more expensive. There'd be no consolidation. There'd be no economies of scale of doing it. That's why taxpayers get together and say, you know what makes sense? If we all just chipped in a little bit and we had this one service that picked up our trash and put it in one landfill where it's not going to, where it's less likely to degrade the water, and it's going to be less likely to be harmful to our kids and things like that. There are things that just make sense that should either be natural monopolies or it should be run by the government and by taxpayers. Corrections is a great example of this. And it's a huge problem, and it's one of ALEC's biggest funders, and it's some of the most controversial legislation. Another one of our 4 corners neighbors, Arizona. I was waiting for that. Yeah. Arizona, 1070, Senate Bill 1070. Yeah, okay, there's a legitimate immigration debate. We do need comprehensive immigration reform, and there are safety issues, and frankly, the people get hurt most by having this all be in the shadows are the immigrants themselves. Because you can't report a domestic violence case if you're an immigrant, because like, hey, I'll call a media, right? You don't have any right to the workplace if you're an immigrant and you don't have documentation and you're not here legally. We do need to do something about this. But the key component of the Arizona law, and it's an ALEC bill by the Corrections Corporation of America based in Nashville, Tennessee. The key component of that is that you get to lock up tens of thousands more people, more bed nights. And the irony is that the American crime rate, generally violent crime, has generally been going down in the last 30, 40 years. That's the good news. But if you own some private prisons, or if you want to get into that business that takes taxpayer dollars, you will do everything you can to incarcerate every kid with a joint, every person who isn't lily white, every person who, jaywalks. You have every incentive. And this happens in the real world. The CCA law that passed in Arizona, that is an ALEC bill. That is what happens when you put private companies, and look, there's a place for profit, right? It's awesome. Thank you, Steve Jobs and Apple, and their labor practices suck in China, but that's, basically it's a great product, right? I mean, there are some good things about the private sector. They wanted to make a profit, they came up with a product, and a lot of us, how many people in the room have iPhones? Monica, right? They're awesome. There's a place for that. But when you're talking about people's lives, and the right to deny somebody their freedom to walk around and enjoy the Wasatch or the Sandias or any of this great thing, just to see your kids or your grandkids, right? The ability to lock somebody up and deprive them of their basic freedoms, when the motivation for that is, I can make more money the more people I lock up, it ripples through society in a number of ways. Not just the war on drugs, not just immigration. You can have somebody who's not a great kid and robs some people, does some bad stuff, and trust me, they need to be separated from the general population. Well, let's try to rehab them. What the private prison companies do is they don't do real rehab. They absolutely do not. That's one of the biggest hoaxes out there. The GEO and CCA and Cornell, they're the big three. They won't do rehab. They want more bed nights. They'll find ways to get you in solitary because you get more money in most states when you put someone in solitary. They will find ways to deny, everyone knows if you get a 10-year sentence with good behavior, you're probably out in 5. Well, we'll make sure that you don't get that good behavior. You're going to serve your full 10, we may tax them on at the end. That's what all their motivation is. So it's not that the private sector is inherently bad. There are some things that the private sector inherently cannot and should not do. Corrections is one of them. There are just a couple of examples I want to bring up because, boy, we have public interest in some of these groups that do research on this or not, but some of the stuff that I know off the top of my head. But it's great examples, and the judicial system is always good for a lot of conversation. This doesn't make sense. So let's put a child care company. Ends up getting a contract. And the format, you've heard for this, they do the lobbying, the whining and dining, and it's been understated, but the campaign contributions, you cannot understate that part. Because even if there are campaign finance laws, they'll channel the money through independent expenditures and different legislative leadership PACs. And I'm a lobbyist for Action, so I know some of these tricks too. So what they do is they get these guys to pass laws allowing the outsourcing of something like child care services. Do you have child care services being privatized? So they did it in Pennsylvania. 20-year contract, $58 million. Not bad cash, you get it. Turns out the judges who were in charge of overseeing these programs were getting $2.6 million in kickbacks over 7 years and ended up giving almost every kid that came in front of them the harshest possible sentences. Nobody, it talked about a group that got to at least try to rehab for, right? And give kids some kind of chance. So there's a bunch of kids in Pennsylvania, this wasn't in Penn State, a bunch of kids in Pennsylvania who ended up spending a hell of a lot more time in prison than they ever should have or would have had it not been for private prisons. Toll road privatization, total disaster. They do 99-year deals. Denver, a bunch of you probably go over to Denver, some I go up there sometimes, and I see around the game or something. $10 to go on a toll road. That's outrageous. What do you think? The market, right, or at least we through our politicians would build some alternative restaurant there. You can't do it because there's a clause saying that they can't do anything that would hurt the revenue of that toll company. So I really hope you'll stick around and ask questions later, because I know privatization is a big deal in Utah, but I really want to thank you because you're the ones who are going to help us turn this